What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about New Mutants number 14 by Vita Ayala and Rod Rice. And in this video, we're going to learn that the younger mutants on Krakoa are going through some growing pains. And right now, they need new teachers to teach them how to be the next wave of mutants to protect the island. And more importantly, who are the perfect mutants to teach them. We're also going to learn that these very same mutants may just have a darker influence that's hovering over them that people have been clamoring to find out about ever since they learned he was on the island. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, wash your damn hands! And let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Right off rip, we do get some Ten of Swords fallout in this book. Nothing I think is even really worth spending a whole heap of a lot of time on, because honestly, if you've been reading New Mutants up to this point, you kind of already know where a little bit of it comes from. But one of the things that has popped up in this comic, after their encounter with Cosmar right before all the Ten of Swords stuff kicked off, Karma had been having some issues with sleeping. Some of the other New Mutants are having issues with sleeping, but I think that's going to be something that's going to become a bigger issue a little bit later down the road. I think that's something that's going to be addressed later on. What this book really kind of hammers on is the fact that the New Mutants have realized that the younger mutants on the island, some of which we're already familiar with, like Petra, Anoli, Dust, Scout, Sprite, and Pixie, I believe. Yeah, we're all kind of already pretty familiar with those characters. But one of the characters, Fauna, who I think a lot of people remember as the little green character that we met in House of X #1, we're starting to realize we're seeing more of that character, and I'm really happy to see that character wasn't just a throwaway piece. This is someone who we'll probably be seeing a lot more of later down the road, and who knows, could probably become a bigger character in their own right as time goes on. Just depends on how all this plays out. However, one of the things that is brought up in this book is the fact that the New Mutants recognize, these kids are having a hard time adjusting to life on Krakoa. They're becoming bored because there's nothing for them to do. There's no mutant overlords trying to take over humanity every 2 weeks. No one's trying to blow up the mansion every 6 weeks. No one's trying to abduct mutants out of the sewers. Well, they probably are still doing that, every few months. But the thing is, they don't have anything to do. They don't have any way to focus their talents and their abilities. So they're becoming restless, as teenagers are already wont to do. And what the New Mutants are doing is that they have reached out to the Quiet Council. But I love the letter that they send, because the letter is very hey, look, we need you guys to do something about this. And Charles's reply to this letter that is written and signed by all of the New Mutants is, we recognize this is a problem. This is a big deal, and I'm so glad you guys volunteered to do it, to take care of this. So the New Mutants are now in charge of bringing up the New Mutants and making sure that they're able to control their powers, they're able to keep themselves entertained, they're able to make themselves assets to Krakoa, and the way they're going to do that is with synergy. They're going to be learning synergy, as we've been talking about in previous issues, going back to X-Men number 11, and then building on up from that, where we talked about, I think even in the previous video that I did, we talked about Magneto merging his powers with Magma and Iceman and other characters. And we even talked about the Fastball special being the first piece of mutant technology melding powers to create an effect that neither mutant could achieve on their own. And we actually see that these kids, they're actually learning things. They're learning how to use their powers. They're learning how to work as a unit. We see the character Anoli, Fauna, Nature Girl, and Scout teaming up against Petra, Dust, Pixie, and Rainboy. And they're able to make a cohesive unit between these numbers. And it's really interesting. Even Magic is impressed with how well they're able to operate. And the thing I find very interesting in this is that they're oh, well, let's show you guys the next step. And they start showing off their abilities and how they're able to work together in ways that we haven't seen really in a lot of instances, like in the case of Magic and Mirage, how they're able to extend Mirage's range with her abilities by using Magic's teleportation disc. Warlock and Warpath are able to synergize with Warlock, basically creating some kind of a power loader, almost like one of those power loaders from Aliens, creating like a power loader form around Warpath, which augments Warpath's already considerable strength. And last but most interestingly, Magic and Wolfsbane's synergy attack, where they're able to send Wolfsbane through one of Magic's portals and return not as just one wolf, but as multiple wolves, upwards of 5 wolves coming back out of the portal, which is just a strange and interesting ability in and of itself. And the kids, they're excited because they're like, oh my God, we're gonna be able to learn these things. We're gonna be able to do the same things you guys just did. This is an amazing thing. It's so great. But the thing that I think kind of pours a little cold water on the whole affair is when Scout brings up something that I think has been a major point of contention. A lot of people have been asking me questions about this in the comments, especially in light of things that happened with Hellions regarding Madeline Pryor. But Scout asked the question, okay, well, we're doing all these things, we're doing all these crazy things. What if one of us loses control? What if one of us gets hurt? What if one of us gets killed? And Magic assures that, oh, it's okay. We have the resurrection protocols. We'll just bring you back. And Scout asked a very good question that I think has not really been focused on as much since the whole incident with Madeline Pryor. And it's the fact that, okay, well, if we have the resurrection protocols, why hasn't Madeline Pryor been resurrected? Why hasn't Evan been resurrected? And the reason why she's asked about these characters, if you don't remember who Evan is, that's Evan Sabanur, who is basically a clone of Apocalypse that Phantom X created using the world. And this Apocalypse clone, later on known as Genesis, was raised by Ultimaton and became, for pretty much all intents and purposes, the polar opposite of what Apocalypse was at the time. He was a good guy. He wanted to do good things. And Madeline Pryor, of course, being the Goblin Queen, is a psychopath and I would dare say probably one of the craziest villains in X-Men's history. And yeah, she is a problem. And they even kind of use that as a way to kind of debunk some of Scout's fears, because Scout is herself a clone. And they try and shrug some of this off by saying, yeah, Madeline Pryor hurt people. She hurt both humans and mutants. She was a problem for both humans and mutants, and she had already broken so many of the laws that they already have in place, and they only have 3. But it does beg the question, what happens to Evan? Is Evan somewhere in the resurrection queue as Magic and Wolfsbane try to make Scout believe? Is this actually a thing? Will we see Genesis return? I don't know, maybe. But whatever it is, it doesn't make Scout feel any better. In fact, it kind of makes Scout feel worse, I would dare say. But at the end of it all, the thing that is going to be really troubling for these new mutants that are coming up on Krakoa is that they have someone that they're reporting to, that they're coming to and talking about all the things that they're learning from the new mutants and probably everything else that's going on at Krakoa. And that character is someone who we are reintroduced to in the beginning of this book with kind of a more sympathetic arc than what we're used to seeing about Amal Farouk, but that is the Shadow King. The fact that Amal Farouk was at one point in time a good person. He was a good kid, but he had so many bad things happen to him. The death of his father, being left alone and abandoned when his father died and losing their business. And with the Shadow King kind of looming over Amal Farouk, we learn that, yeah, it turned him into the person that we are more aware of today. And right now, the Shadow King is looming over these children and basically wanting them to tell him everything that they've been doing on the island, everything the other mutants have been teaching him. He's keeping some kind of an intel ring on Krakoa, and it's a very interesting thing to kind of become aware of. But I don't know, it's hard to say exactly what it is he's going to do, but once again, that's one of those things that, knowing Shadow King's history and his desire to have other mutants under his wing, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say right now, this is going to be a whole problem. This is going to be a whole problem for Krakoa. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now. And who knows? He could actually not be doing anything, I guess, untoward. Who knows? It's the Shadow King, and he's on the island. As Scout said earlier, there's a lot of mutants on the island who used to hurt people, who used to do bad things, who've done awful things, and Shadow King is one of them, and yet here he is. Now, I do want to go ahead and point out the one character who is not present, and that's Scout. There's, of course, some other characters are not present either. Nature Girl and I believe Sprite and Dust and Petra, they're not present. But these other characters are, and it's very interesting because, especially the case of Cosmar, a character who is very new and has very little control over their powers and is probably very easily manipulated. Just based on the fact that, if someone could offer them the opportunity to control their abilities, they would probably listen to whatever they had to say, because their abilities have basically plagued them for pretty much their entire and yet very short publication history, considering this character is, for all intents and purposes, barely a few months old. I really like what is going on here, what Vita Ayala is setting up for the New Mutants going forward. I like the dynamic and the idea of trying to expound upon the ideas about mutants and how they could make their powers synergize with each other to create all kind of weird and crazy effects. I really like that. New Mutants is like, no, we're actually going to dive headfirst into this, and we are going to take this idea and we're going to run with it. And what better place than with the new up-and-coming mutants in the New Mutants? We are seeing some wild and crazy stuff that they're able to do, and I think that's really awesome that they were able to put this together. I also really like the addition of the Shadow King into the mix, kind of reintroducing him to us rather in the beginning of this issue, kind of making him a sympathetic figure in a way, and then at the same time letting us know that he's up to something on the island. I knew Shadow King was going to play into Reign of X in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I just wasn't expecting it to be right this second, but I'm glad Vita Ayala is on the case with this one. They are doing a fantastic job making this very interesting. Really curious to see where this goes. But anyways, let me know what you thought about New Mutants number 14 by Vita Ayala and Rod Rice. What do you think the Shadow King is planning with these younger mutants? Wash your damn hands and sound off in the comments.